Hello and welcome to today's video. This is going to be my December wrap up. It's going to be super concise, super succinct. I'm going to try and keep it all as simple as possible. Honestly, December went quite well for me. I read quite a few decent books, but I am ready to move on to the new year now, so I don't really want to keep talking about these books. None of them are any favourites, none of them are like up there top tier, so I'm just going to tell you my basic thoughts and feelings on them. In December I read 15 books total. This accounted to 5,903 pages, so quite a good amount, you know, like 15 books is definitely above average and like above by quite a few, so really happy with that. Like, can't complain at all, and yeah, I enjoyed a lot of them. The only downside to my reading in December is towards the end I did just start letting myself mood read completely, and it has led to a lot of books that I've started throughout the year being taken into the next year. So I think there are around 15 books that I've started in 2024 and I will have to continue on to in 2025, which is obviously absolutely fine. Just personally, I would have preferred if I could have avoided it, but yeah, that's the only negative. Everything else in December has been pretty positive, except for the first book I read, so let's just get into it. So I read Better Hate Than Never, and I gave it 1 star. I really did not like this. I don't know why I finished it, to be quite honest. I can remember around the 60% mark, I went in a straight over to DNFing and put it down, and I honestly don't know why I didn't. Well, I know the main reason for me was I've read so many books by this author and really enjoyed them. Like, I can trust this author, surely it won't continue to be bad. It did continue to be bad. Honestly, I can't tell you specifics. I've blocked most of this out. I read it right at the start of December and I read it via audiobook and I've blocked it out. It was dreadful. Like, I really regret finishing this book. There's not many books that I regret finishing in 2024 and this is one of 3. So yeah, definitely wish I had DNF'd. Then I read A Spark in the Shadows, which I gave 3.5 stars, and this is a really good rating. I think it was only disappointing because I was expecting more from it. Every other book that I've read by this author has been a 5-star or a 4.5. I think there might have been a 4-star there, but like they've all been really high, so 3.5 stars was a definite like lowering down of that, and because of that it does just feel a little bit disappointing. Like, I definitely wish I'd have loved it more and given it higher, but I do think there's potential for me to give it higher on a reread, and this is a very awkward one for me. So I received an arc of this from the author. Like, I'm really happy that I did. Like, I read it before it came out and really did enjoy it. Like, I did really enjoy it, and the reason I think I could give it higher on a reread is my main issue with this stemmed from my own confusion, and I don't know if this was actually confusing or if it was me being stupid. I don't believe that anything of what I'm going to say is a proper spoiler. It all happens within the first couple of chapters, so like there's no spoiler here, but within a couple of chapters in, we have quite a big time jump. And in my head I realised, oh, there's a time jump. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to see this journey, this travel. But okay, there's a time jump. Wasn't expecting it, but let's go with it. Okay, this time jump was explained as 8 moons. So in my head I'm like, 8 moons must mean 8 nights. There's, you know, the moons come up 8 times. And then a lot of things were being said and a lot of talk about what had been happening over this amount of time and how she'd been left for so long and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, this 8 days? What are we on about? Not long after, maybe a couple of pages, I was like, I think 8 moons might have meant 8 months. I think it meant 8 months, but I'm not confident with that. And it wasn't for another better chapter where the fact that 8 moons was 8 months was actually confirmed, with that was like actually the passing of time, and it just really confused me, and it really put me in a weird headspace, I think, for a good few chapters after that, of me just trying to like figure out what was going on, why this time jump had happened, and like where we were with it, really. Like, yeah, it was confusing, and I think it could put me in a weird headspace for the rest of it, because I do really like the characters. I don't feel like we got to know them as much as I would have liked. Like, I definitely would have liked to know more about their individual personalities, but from what I did get to know, I did really like the characters, and I thought that the like castle setting that we're in was a really cool setting. Like, it was very interesting. Like, we got to see little bits of the world like sprinkled in here or there with a couple of drips, but like most of it was set in this castle, and I feel like it really got us to see like the political side of the world, and also how these characters work together, and like how their like relationships were moving over time. And I really enjoyed that part of it, so I don't know, it's a confusing one. 3.5, it was good. Like, I'm excited for the second book in the series to come out. I will definitely be continuing on with it, but honestly the time jump's still niggling away in there. I'm not sure. Then I picked up a random romance book. It was just like I need an audiobook. Went on Everand, saw that they'd got one called Mr. Heartbreaker, and I gave it a go, and I gave it 3 stars. It was alright, it was fairly decent. I can remember enjoying it enough when I read it. It was a brother's best friend, like, kind of trope deal, except the best friend didn't know that like the female main character was the brother's sibling. So there's a bit of a twist there, and I did enjoy it. It was fun, and I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a cheesy romance, but it was exactly what I needed at the time, and exactly what I needed for my head at the time, so I'm glad I read it. Then I read Season Schemings, and I also gave this a 3 star. I think if I was thinking a bit more critically, these like kind of silly romance books I was picking up, they might not have got as high rated, but they were just exactly what I needed at the time, and I had fun with them, and they were a cheesy time. So it was a fun romance, it was fun to read. It was my first ever holiday romance, which I wasn't expecting, so I did do a holiday vlog, which we'll talk about later on. But yeah, I wasn't expecting much out of it, but I did like the characters, and I liked the story. And I also liked that we didn't just get to know the main 2 characters, we got to know like quite a few of the side characters as well, which makes me think there will be more than what there is currently of 8 different characters. So yeah, it was fun. Then I read Queen Bee by Juno Dawson. This is the prequel to the HMRC series. It came out after book 2, so I guess it's technically 2.5, that's when it came out, but it is classed as a prequel. I guess the first thing to say is I've seen a lot of people online discussing whether you can read this first, whether you should start with this. I would say no, honestly. Like, I don't think you need to have read book 2 to read this, but I think you should have read book 1 to read this, just because it is so short. It's like a little novella, and most things in this, like, you can follow along with, you can understand, you can know pretty well, but it didn't really explain the magic system and how the magic works in this world. It just kind of threw you into it. So I think if you want to make sure that you understand every aspect and you understand how the magic is working, that reading HMRC first, where you get that understanding given to you throughout the whole book, and then reading this would be for the best, just to understand that. But yeah, I'm really glad I picked it up. It's a historical one, so this goes back to, honestly I can't remember the year, but Anne Boleyn has just been beheaded, and that's where we start the story, that's where we go back to. There are a few flashbacks, so it does take place somewhat in the flashbacks before that, and it was really interesting. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, because I don't tend to like historical books, but it really did just throw you in and throw you into the story, and like you really just were basically following along these different characters doing like what they needed to do to survive in this era. It was really, really good. I enjoyed everything that happened in it, and there was a lot of stuff in it that I did not predict, I did not see coming, I did not know what to expect at all, so like that was also really cool. It did surprise me. And then it was also really fun afterwards. There was a couple of characters where something quite major happened to them, and I didn't know who they were. Like, I don't know that much about this period of time in history. Obviously I know Anne Boleyn, but I honestly don't think I could tell you like much of the surrounding characters. Like, there's a couple of names that I recognised, but I probably couldn't have told you much about them. Most of the names I didn't even recognise in here. And it was really fun afterwards being able to like Google them and like see the real women who these characters were based off. So yeah, really, really good time. Then I read Love Like Palms, which I gave 3 stars. Kiss Her Once For Me, which I gave 2.5 stars. And Mistletoe Motive, which I gave 3.5 stars. These are all Christmas romances, holiday romances, however you like to word it. I won't go into them all individually. I will link up above in one of the corners my Reading Christmas Romances reading vlog, because I read them all in that, and I talked about them a lot in that. I really waffled on, but yeah, I did talk about them a lot, so I don't need to go into them individually. I don't feel like they're all Christmas romances. They're all, if you want a festive time, if you want like the sprinkling of Christmas along with the romance, they all do it. They all do it in different ways. But out of all of them, my favourite was definitely the Mistletoe Motive. It was only a novella, so I do wonder, for me personally and my own reading taste, should I pick up novellas if I want something like more seasonal and more like festive, I guess, because that definitely worked the best. And I will also say all of these were single point of view. I would class them as, like, technically Mistletoe Motive wasn't, like, there was one chapter where we had a different point of view, but I would class them all as single point of view, which just doesn't work as well for me either. Like, I honestly, I don't know if I'd have picked them up if I knew they were single point of view. I expected all of them to be dual point of view just based on how the synopses were written, so I was shocked by that. So there's that as well. Could have rated it higher if I actually enjoyed single point of view or if they were dual point of view. Then I read Quicksilver, and this one both surprised me and didn't at the same time. I hadn't picked this one up when it first came out. I think it was first traditionally published about 6 months ago. It definitely came out around summertime this year, but it had been indie published previous to that, and basically, like, this book had so much hype that I didn't want to pick it up. I was like, this hype is insane, like, it's not going to live up to it, and also I don't think it did. But the reason I picked it up now is during December I'd seen a couple of people who, like, I personally follow and, like, trust their ratings and reviews rate this and give, like, just a lot of detail into what to expect from it, and I feel like I was really able to adjust my expectations based on those reviews and trusting them. So I decided to pick it up, and I've read it super quick. I brought this from the shop and I started it the same day. Like, I really did enjoy it. It's a 4-star for me, so it didn't get the full 5 stars, it's 4 stars. But I feel like there was a lot of setup in this, and there's definitely potential for other books in the future to get higher once we can get more into the plot and more into the romance, I guess. Although, like, honestly, the plot is what's really hooking me with this one, which is surprising because normally with fantasy romances it is pretty 50-50, but I think a lot's going to happen in this, and I'm really intrigued to explore all of the world, or worlds, I guess. I don't know. Very interesting, and I like the magic system as well. It was really cool. It definitely had a lot of tropes that I like, and I think if you enjoy, like, basic, I don't mean basic in, like, a bad way, like, not like basic bitch, but, like, just, like, basic as in what you'd expect from a fantasy romance, like when you think of, like, ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, that sort of thing, what you'd expect from that sort of, like, it's very simple fantasy romance. If you enjoy that, you could really enjoy this. It does a lot of similar tropes, it does a lot of similar, like, things in terms of, like, fae and magic and stuff like that. It's really interesting. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I will continue on with the series. Then I read The Dream Thieves. This is the second book in the Raven Boys series, and I gave it 3 stars. I am really glad that I've continued on with the series. I definitely feel like I got to learn more about the magic and the world of where we are in the Raven Boys. Like, the book 2 definitely expanded upon that quite a bit, and it also expanded on the characters. I felt like I got to know at least some of the characters quite a bit better. I really got to understand them more and just learn their individual personalities, whereas I feel like in book 1, even though you could tell there were differences and new bits and pieces about them, they very much were as a group. Whereas in book 2, I feel like you do learn more about them individually and their personalities, so I enjoyed that. So overall, really good, except for the one thing that didn't work for me in this book, and that was the pacing. It was really slow. Like, even when a lot of stuff was happening, a lot of plot was happening, the actual pace of it was really slow, and I did feel like there just wasn't much going on, even when there was. Like, I don't know, like, the pacing was just weird and didn't really work for me, to the point of I mainly read this via audio, and I had 2 hours left of the audiobook and didn't finish it for 3 weeks just because I was worried it would drag. Like, I'm glad I finished it. I did really enjoy the ending. It was just really slow, and the pacing did kind of ruin all of the other things that I really liked about this one for me. Don't know how I did this, but I somehow skipped Live and Let Lionel. I mean, I might as well skip it. It wasn't very good. It was my other 2-star. This was, you know, the only other, like, kind of disappointment of the month. Live and Let Lionel is, it's a collection. I think it's technically classed as a short story collection, but it's essentially a load of alternate point of views put together in a book, and then, like, 2 short stories. It might have been 3 short stories, but, like, honestly, like, I'd already read some of them in other collections, and the alternate point of views are stuff that you'd normally get for free, and, like, you know, whilst you're waiting for the next book to come, it would be like a little, oh, like, you know, you're happy to wait, here's a little bonus chapter, alternative point of view from the last book sort of thing. Yeah, it didn't really work for me. It didn't help that if half, maybe even more than half of the alternative point of views were from a character who I don't like, so that didn't work. And then the whole premise of this book and how it was put together and why it was called Live and Let Lionel is it has a introduction at the start of every chapter, every, like, new thing from Lionel, I think it was meant to be funny, but it wasn't. Like, it didn't work for me, it didn't do anything, it was just a bit cringe, to be honest. I didn't love it. The introduction thing didn't work for me either, so yeah, 2 stars. And then last but not least, I actually really enjoyed this series and I'll definitely be continuing on with it. I read the first 3 books in the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series. So the first one was Dark Fate and I gave it 4 stars. It was a good start to a new fantasy romance, and because of how like prevalent the mystery and like that mystery plot and like trying to discover what was going on aspect in this was, it didn't even feel like a fantasy romance in this first book, to be honest. Like, it was very plot heavy. I felt like for how long the book was and how many characters there are, I did get to know them all like relatively well. I at least, you know, knew the basics of them all. I never got confused between any of them, anything like that. The only real negative for me was the amount of convenient things happening. There was quite a lot of convenience, like you know, like, oh, and then we've discovered this, or this thing happened, and it was like, oh, well, that was very convenient. Good job that happened then, isn't it? But honestly, I didn't mind it. Like, yeah, it's a little silly, but like, I really did not mind it. I had a great time. I was sucked into the story every single time that I picked this book up. And I'd say the only other downside about this one is I would not recommend starting with this series if you are new to the Zodiac world. I don't think that the magic or the politics are explained in this series, like, or at least not to the length that there were in the Zodiac Academy series. And I think there are quite a few things that I knew when reading this, but only because I'd read the Zodiac Academy series first. So yeah, do that what you will. Then I read Savage Fae book 2 and I also gave that a 4 star. I wanted a bit more progress with the mystery. We did progress with it, we did see a little bit of movement, we did make headway in it, but just not that much for how long the book was. And then I also would have preferred to have actual on-page conversations about what the relationships were and like what they meant to each other. But I was, once again, absolutely sucked into the story, could not put it down, really glad I read it. And then last but certainly not least, last book of the month was Vicious Fae, and I also gave that 4 stars and still really enjoyed it. Still really engaged by it, and we really started to make progress. Like, this was the book where we really started to make progress into the mystery, discover things, figure things out, and like, I really loved that about it. It was also, I would say, the first book that did feel a bit more 50-50. Like, the romance was a lot heavier in this one than it was the previous 2, and it really felt like our characters were starting to come together as a true team, or at least up until that twist at the end, which definitely got me. I did not see coming, but yeah, can't wait to continue on and see where that twist takes us. But yes, those were all of the books that I read during December, and that's all I really have to say. There will be a few videos coming out to do my 2024 reading as a whole. I'm going to do a best books video, I'm going to do a statistics video, and I think I'm also going to do a video about like the books that I DNF'd, but also like the books I probably should have DNF'd. I think that would be quite interesting to make. So yeah, expect those coming soon. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. Please do give it a like if you did like it, subscribe down below if you want to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!